Proton torpedoes are the most common anti-ship missile weapons used in Star Wars. Proton torpedoes were used to destroy the first Death Star, and they are the main weapon of choice for precision strikes against large targets such as capital ships like Star Destroyers, and can occasionally attack smaller fighter-sized ships. This video will explain how a proton torpedo probably works and the tactics used. But before we get started, I want to thank my newest Patreon supporters on Patreon. As of this recording, Tyler and Jean-Luc Martel. Patreon is a platform where patrons can help guide the content of this channel and others, especially with polling. When the Patreon goals are reached, I'll be able to make a number of hardware and software upgrades that will make it easier for me to provide content for you. Okay, let's get started with the name of these weapons, Proton Torpedoes. A proton is a positively charged subatomic particle. If protons are released, just like in a nuclear explosion, they can smack into atoms and release other protons, which can cause chain reactions that may continue and can penetrate matter with destructive havoc. This is a bit different from Star Trek's Photon Torpedoes, as explained in my video about them. Photon Torpedoes are matter-antimatter warheads that release a lot of radiation in the form of photons, and plasma and heat. But protons have a certain advantage over photons, and that is their destructive application can be more directly controlled. Protons can penetrate into matter very effectively, into the target, rather than explode in all directions. Proton torpedoes can also penetrate ratios, which are designed to mitigate laser and other radiation-based weapons. Most large warships in Star Wars are equipped with both ray shields and particle shields, but the proton torpedo's ability to bypass ray shields makes it an effective weapon against well-shielded targets. And now for their tactics and use. Proton torpedoes vary in size, some being large capital ship weapons and others small enough to be used on X-wings and Y-wings. They all have homing ability, and the smallest ones can be very precise. This makes them great for strikes against specific targets on larger capital ships, such as their turbolasers, shield generators, and thrusters. They do have one great weakness, however. Proton torpedoes are very vulnerable to point defense weapons and can be shot down. The game here is to get these things onto the target before that happens. While it is true that many capital ships do carry proton torpedo launchers, firing one at a time against another ship that has fighter protection or smaller laser turrets doesn't do much good at all. It is always better to fire them in spread so that the point defense weapons can be overwhelmed. Proton torpedoes are often touted as great long-range weapons. Well, this is only true against slow-moving targets with no defense turrets. The longer the proton torpedo has to fly, the more likely it will be shot down. This is why proton torpedoes are best used by fighters and bombers, which can launch the torpedoes closer to the target to lessen the chance of them being shot down. Now for some advanced torpedo tactics. One very bold, tricky but effective way to use proton torpedoes is to send some of your faster fighters towards the target ship first, and then actually fire proton torpedoes at the fighters. The fighters will have a chance to jink and dodge while in flight, and the torpedoes match the fighters' maneuvers, which makes it more difficult to hit. Also, the defense turrets will often focus on the fighters rather than the torpedoes, but when the fighter is upon the target, they suddenly will pull up, while the torpedoes continue on to impact the target ship. Now, one serious weakness of bombers and strike craft is that they too can be intercepted and destroyed. If your carrier, Star Destroyer, or Mon Cal cruiser is tough enough, it is better to tank the enemy ship's laser fire and close onto the target before launching bombers. When bombers are launched at close range, they have less flight time to the target and are far less likely to be shot down before delivering their payload. That's all I have for proton torpedoes. Thanks for watching, space friends. As of the release of this video, I should be well into building my favorite non-canon Star Trek ship, the Winged Defender, which will be animated and presented soon. Also, through polls, you all have chosen that we need to design and animate a Chiss starship. Patrons on Patreons may vote on the final design concepts at patreon.com/resurrected, and we will build and animate this ship. Until next time, space friends.